Hey, you guys. So, as always, welcome back to Becoming the Podcast. I am one of your hosts, 𝒦𝒑𝓃𝑒, also known as MB. And then we have our other co-host here, my girl, Janelle. Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop. Hey, y'all.
So if you are new with us, we are a weekly podcast. We have episodes that drop every Thursday, and we talk a little bit about anything and everything. But our whole purpose here at the podcast is to help people on their journey to become. So we leave that open-ended for our audience. So become, better, how to manage manage money, or, better with your finances, or just whatever you want to do. But we do hope you are working on the journey to become the best version of you. So, as we always say, we are not experts, but we are here to do the work. Definitely, as always, before we get into today's topic, I want to shout out everyone who is listening to the podcast, as we are on all streaming platforms. And then a special shout out to everyone who is watching the podcast as well. We are on YouTube. So if you want to watch us, if you want to engage a little bit more in that experience, go on over to the I'm Just MB channel. So I'm Just MB. And you can watch all of our episodes. Me and Janelle be having a good old time, facial expressions, all of that. So you definitely don't want to miss out. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. So Janelle, what are we talking about this week?
All right, girl. Whew. So this past year has been hard on all of us. And it's safe to say that some of the things that we've witnessed and experienced have been quite traumatic. Last March, we were hit with COVID and things were shutting down. We literally went from seeing family and friends daily to not seeing them at all. We saw record-breaking numbers of deaths due to the pandemic. We also saw the nation with police brutality at its highest peak with the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Black and brown-skinned people are experiencing fear, anger, sadness. It's just so much that we're dealing with at this present time.
Definitely.
So, yes. So it's almost like you don't want to watch the news or interact with people because you just don't know what's next. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And traumatic experiences cause a wide range of issues such as physical, emotional, mental, or even spiritual harm. So this week's topic is geared to us learning how to respond to traumatic events and how to cope.
Yeah. You actually kind of inspired this topic. We were talking about last week, we had talked about not self-doubt, but self-sabotage. And at the end of the episode, I forgot what you specifically said, but it just was like inspiring on like trauma. And I was like, okay, that's what we need to talk about next is trauma. Cause I feel like we've skated around the episode or the topic. And so we really need to get into it. When you were reading what we're talking about this week, it made me think of the other day when I went to stop for gas at Costco's. By the way, not to promote any, gas station, but, it's cheaper if you get gas at some of these, big grocery stores like Costco or Sam's Club. So just a tip for anybody out there. But anyway, I was at Costco's getting gas and the attendant there seemed like a pretty friendly guy, walks over to me and is like, hey, how are you doing? We're exchanging in conversation for a little bit while I'm pumping my gas. And he says, have you been watching, the George Floyd trials? And I have been watching them, but I just did not want to engage in that conversation at that moment because I didn't know what he was going to say. So I was like, no, I really haven't been keeping up with it. So, he was like, oh, okay. He had said something and I don't know what he said. I was pumping my gas. So I was like multitasking. And he was like, well, have a good day. But just, that trauma of like everything that's going on, like, it's like, you don't even want to have these conversations. Mm-hmm. Like you lack energy to have the conversation.
And I really feel you on that because it's draining. People don't realize how draining it is to really express how important Black lives matter. You get what I'm saying? It's hard to justify and not justify somebody killing you because of your skin color and not taking into consideration that you're a human first before you look at my race or anything else. So I totally understand because sometimes I'd be like, you know what? I don't even want to talk about it. It got to the point where I was just like, shoot, this is crazy. It's like you hate to become numb to it, but you see it so often and no repercussions, were really done. But it just amazes me. You get what I'm saying? How
Right.
the reality of it all, and you be like, dang, like this is the world we live in. You get what I'm saying? Like I'm
Yeah.
from Ferguson, and so when we saw Mike Brown, that whole situation transpire, we just sitting here like, dang, this just happened in my community. Like 2 blocks down from me. Like
Yep.
I can, and people be like, that used to be a crick trip over there. And I'm like, yeah, I miss crick trip. They burnt it down. But but right then and there when everything was going on, it was very traumatic to see your city, your hometown, like on fire. Literally on
Yeah.
fire.
It's crazy. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and the whole, Breonna Taylor, and just, someone being able to literally go into your house and then just shoot you, and there be no justice for her.
Exactly.
Or her family. So it's just it's hard to talk about, but it's even hard to display how you feel about the situation. And I feel like when I was doing a little bit of research on like trauma, PTSD kept coming up as, a thing related to trauma. And I feel like a lot of us are in that sense. Like, obviously, a lot of people think about PTSD when they think of people who have served in the military in some form of capacity. But it really can be outside of that. Just you going through any type of traumatic life event, you can have PTSD from that. And it can be displayed in different, realms. I know Janelle kind of talks about the overarching idea of trauma. But I wanted to put like, a Webster, in a sense, definition to what trauma is. So trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event like an accident, rape, or natural disaster. Those are just some of the examples. Immediately after the event, shock and denial are typical. Longer term reactions include unpredictable emotions, flashbacks, strained relationships, and even physical symptoms like headache or nausea. So those are just some of the examples. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I'm probably experiencing some trauma right now in the sense of, everything that's going on with police brutality and things of that nature. But I know a lot of podcasts will talk about, what has happened specifically because me and Janelle were talking about before we got on. What is it? �ฬ𝒃𝓃𝑔 is his name? I wanted to make sure I pronounced it correctly. �ฬ𝒃𝓃𝑔 actually got sentenced today, and he was found guilty for all 3
Charges.
I wanted to say indictments. I don't know why I wanted to use indictment instead of charges. But he was found guilty for all 3 charges. And I feel like a lot of podcasts are going to talk about that. And we probably will circle back around to that throughout this episode. Because to be honest, we experience it. So that's our own experience. And that's a lot what we talk about. But I wanted to shift to say all that, you guys. I wanted to shift a little bit to relationship trauma specifically. Whether it be friendship or sexual, because even though I feel like we could talk a lot about that, I kind of want to just shift our minds. Like we're all experiencing, what has happened with and continues to happen, because that wasn't the only thing that happened. Like last week, the whole thing with there was like 3 incidents that happened back to back. And I don't want to butcher anybody's name, so I'm not going to go through, but you guys know what I'm talking about. So I want to shift with saying all that. I want to shift to relationship trauma a little bit. And talk about like any experiences like, me or you have gone through. And then kind of just break down some of the feelings associated with those experiences when it comes, being traumatized by those experiences specifically.
Okay, so diving in deep, I've never been in like a physical trauma in reference to like relationship with my partners or whatever like that. I've never experienced that with anybody that I've dated. But MB knows about this, where someone that I was mutual, friends with tried to rape me. And that experience did traumatize me, where I didn't want to trust anybody, especially people that we were around, because again, we were all mutual friends. And I've been around this individual before, had a good time. You know what I'm saying? I never got the vibe of, oh, this person isn't safe.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? I never got that vibe from that person. And again, good spirits, always respectful, everything. So I never would have imagined him trying to do that. And basically, you already know when drinking is involved, things can happen. But we have to remain I want to say remain focused, I guess, in a sense, that when someone says no, it
Right.
means no.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you've been drunk, I don't care if you've been smoking weed, I don't care. But someone says no, they mean it. You get what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And I don't know. I really honestly don't even know what made him or what triggered him to think that was okay or acceptable. And I wasn't playing any games. I was very straightforward. No, I'm good. You get what I'm saying? Like, no.
Right.
So, again, when that happened, the crazy thing is that I immediately called the guys who I knew would protect me in that situation,
Mm-hmm.
or would have came to my rescue immediately. And so I called them, and they were just like, really, like, they were in shock, because they're like, should I know for a fact you don't hang around no crazy people, or you know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying, nobody who's just like reckless or just don't care like that. And even with them, one of my frat brother, he knows them, and he was like, really, like that person? I said, yeah. And even him, he was like, he was ready to go fight and call police and everything else. And like I say, that experience was just very traumatic, to the point where, again, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I really didn't want to be around guys for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And even in reference to talking to guys, I didn't want to do that either. I think it's simply because you just felt so insecure, and the sense of security has really shifted. You get what I'm
Right.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it just changes your whole view and perspective of people, even though they had no involvement in that situation.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, thank you, Janelle, for sharing that. I know we've talked about it offline, so I didn't know if you were going to share that or not. But yeah, I mean, you kind of talked about some of those stages that you go through once you've been in a traumatic experiences, stages like, fear, maybe feeling guilt, having a hard time letting go of that situation, trusting new people, things like that. Um, you guys, I'm going to share a story as well. I'm going to try to get through it without getting emotional. I'm also going to try to get through it without rambling, because you guys are, if you've been listening to the podcast, I can go on and on sometimes. And then I'll be like, hold on, what was my original topic? So I'm going to try to tell this in a simple chronological order. So to start off with, I was sexually assaulted when I was in college. It was by a male friend of mine. It happened when we had went over to this person's dorm, and it was actually, I didn't go by myself. It was me and another friend who was a girl of mine. We went over. The friend who was a girl of mine was a little tired from something we had did earlier. So in college, we had, if you guys didn't know anything about college, a lot of colleges and undergrad dorms, they have like the 2 twin beds that you can bunk. So the individual lived in their own room by themselves, and had the beds bunk. So, my friend who was with us laid on the top bunk. It was like taking a nap on me, and the person who was my friend, the guy who was my friend, sat on the lower bunk and watched some TV or whatever. Not going to go into specific details, but at the time, I had never been sexually active or like anything. Like the most I had ever done with the guy was kiss someone. So at the time, I'm trying to like tell the story without like giving like descriptives.
Mm-hmm.
That's specifically what happened. Maybe
Girl,
like,
because I was thinking that too. I'm like, ooh, I can't say their names. You know what I'm saying?
right. I think you probably know who this is, but
Yeah, I know
it's
exactly
not a
who
friend
it
of.
is.
Let me just disclose this. It's not a friend of Janelle. So if anybody listens to this and thinks it's them, it's not them. But so we were sitting and watching a movie on the bottom bunk. He proceeds to, kind of grab me. And long story short, I won't say what happened, but I was sexually assaulted then and there. As soon as it finishes, my friend on the top bunk, who, remember, she's still in the room. She's in the room when this happened. She's like, "Micaiah, let's go. I'm ready to go." And in my mind, I'm in shock. Like, something happened. I'm in shock. I never said no or yes to anything. So I want people to be aware of, even if you say no, if you don't consent, if you don't say yes, that's one thing. So I was in shock when it happened. My friend gets up. I forget she's there because I'm still in shock at the moment. So she's like, "Micaiah, let's go." And she gets down from the bunk, and then we leave. He has to check us out. And she gets to the door, and she was like, "I know what happened. We need to go tell somebody." And I'm like, "No, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to go back to my dorm room." She's like, "Are you sure? Let's go tell our friend who also lives in this dorm. Maybe, we can talk to them about it." I was like, "No, let's, I don't want to deal with it. Let's go back and have it. Let's go back to our dorm room." Go back to our dorm room, still in shock about the whole situation. There's multiple times that the guy tries to reach out to me. I go back one other time to hang out with him individually. Because I'm in shock. I know a lot of times I watch a lot of SVU, you guys, just so you guys know. But I know a lot of times on SVU, that's my only knowledge about, sexual crimes or things of that nature. They talk about how, like, people who are victims, like, go back. And that was a situation, like, I had gone back to that friend. And it had happened again for a second time. And then he had reached out a few other times, and I stopped communication. Because at that point, like, I had gotten over the shock. I knew what had happened was wrong. But I will say, when it first happened, I didn't label it as sexual assault. I didn't realize that I won't say I didn't label it. I didn't realize that it was sexual assault. I just didn't say anything. Like, this is my fault. It happened. I shouldn't have been in the room, blah, blah. Like, I was running down all that stuff in my head. Like, shouldn't have been there. If I wouldn't have been there, it wouldn't happen. Not that I would have known it would have happened, so I couldn't have made that assumption. I didn't know I thought I was going over there to watch a movie with a friend. I didn't know I was going over there for that to happen. So to make matters worse, the next few weeks, I'm like numb in the sense that I'm a zombie literally walking around. I'm not going to class. With me and this guy had a class together. I'm avoiding that class and all classes at the moment. I'm not hanging out with my friends when they want to go, get lunch at Panda Express. That was our place back in the day. Get lunch at Panda Express. I'm not there. They're like, "Hey, let's go do something." I'm literally sitting in my dorm room, just I promise you, I went through like a slight depression during that time, like right after it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what was going on. Then something in me or someone suggested I go to counseling. I ended up going to the counseling center, and I had 3 sessions with this lady, and we were talking through some of the things and talking about other things, and I was explaining the situation to her, and she was like, "You were sexually assaulted." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" She says, "You don't realize that you were sexually assaulted?" And I was like, "No." She was like, "You didn't consent for that to happen, and it happened." She said, "Did you want that to happen?" I said, "No." "Did you ask for it to happen?" I said, "No." She said, "You were sexually assaulted." So it's crazy to think about things like that. Like, things will happen like that, and you can't even put a name to it. You don't even think, like, you think maybe it was your fault. Like, you're blaming yourself for certain things, and it's crazy to think about things like that. But I'll go even further. Actually, before I get to that part, no, that's not important. I won't include that. What is important is I'm one of those people where I consistently, like, brush things off. I'll even be honest with you guys right now. I haven't 100% dealt with that situation. Like, now I recognize it and I'm understand, like, certain things are a trigger for me. Like, I need to, I recognize certain things, but I still haven't 100% dealt with it. I'll take it even further back. Until I talked about that situation, I had forgot. I don't even say I forgot. I had pushed down that I had been sexually assaulted prior to that. 2 times when I was little by people my age who probably were also sexually assaulted at home. So it's crazy. Like I had never told anyone that it had happened. And I'll say I have a parent that would literally ask me every day when we would take a bath or whatever, because I was little when your parents used to wash you up when you were little. She'd be like, did anybody touch you today? If anybody touched you today, let me know. She would even ask, like, did your dad touch you today? Just to be safe and things like that. And I never told her. And the crazy thing is when I did tell someone was like, you're making that up. That didn't happen. And I'm like, no, it did happen. I didn't dream about this. Why would I dream about something like this?
Right.
So it's just crazy to think about things that have happened that you like push down. Because we even talked about, I think it's relatable for a lot of people in the sense when it comes to police brutality or things of that nature of there's a feeling of dissociation or a feeling of, I don't want to say I'm used to that, but it happened. Oh, well, let's move on.
Yeah, it becomes a normal thing.
Yeah. And I feel like I deal with that a lot. Like something will happen traumatic, whether it's, losing a friend from a friendship or, the two sexual assault situations that I talked about. And I'll just push it down. I won't deal with that. I'll keep moving. I'm doing other stuff. And it truly does come back up later in certain situations. So I definitely want to encourage anyone that has gone through that situation, recognize that you are, I don't want to say a victim, but you are a survivor of that situation, that it did happen to you. And then recognize how you want to move forward in that situation, like heal from it. Take the time to actually heal from it. Don't just push it down. Because like I said, it's going to come back up.
And I second that. And I know MB knows through our conversation about it. I was like, what was I wearing? Was it provocative? Was it enticing? You get what I'm saying? Like I asked all these questions and, one of my guy friends, he said, it has nothing to do with what you're wearing. And he even said, I don't care if you had on a stripper outfit. Right. No means no. You get what I'm saying? And it took him to really talk to me and be like, it's nothing that you did, that was wrong. And it took a long time, and even the guy that I was talking to at the time, he was just like, yo, are you okay? You know what I'm saying? And for a while, I wasn't comfortable with anybody touching me. You know what I'm saying? And MB knows I'm a hugger. I'm very, friendly, like, oh, I love you. I'm going to show, affection. But during that time, I was like, no. Like you touching me, you might get punched in the throat. That's how bad, it had got. And it took some time with me talking to cousins and different ones to be like, okay, are you okay? Are you getting through this? And you really do have to find the right way to cope with it. Right. And my thing is talking to people is therapy. I know that's not everybody's go-to, but talking to people is one way to cope through it. And then I also rely heavily on spiritual health as well. Just being in tune with God and just asking God, what, help me to find some forgiveness in this person for what they did. Right. But then to also put it in his hands, because sometimes I know some people really get emotional, depressed, suicidal when things like that occur. And people not believe them or blame them for that situation happening. So just really knowing how to cope properly and to really express yourself is a huge piece of that.
It's key. It's key. And I did want to talk about another fear that I personally went through after it had happened. It's hard to explain it. It's like almost like a fear of like worthlessness. Just I felt in a sense like used, if not like if that's a good word, and just like you guys, it's hard to go back to that situation to actually put myself in how I actually felt, but it was just like so like emotionally painful. Because like I said, like for that to be your first experience, like that was my first experience sexually outside of kissing someone, which is that is what it is, but like for that to be taken away from me
It's like the pretty,
Right,
you know what I'm
right.
saying?
And I was, and I'll even go further, you guys. It's just to give you a little bit more background information on me. I think Janelle remembers this. If not, it is what it is. When I was 16, my parents gave me a promise ring, and I wore this promise ring all the way up until like college. So like I really valued like like saving myself and things of that nature. I will say when I got to college, I was like, I'm saving myself for the person I love. I'm not waiting until marriage, but that was my personal decision. But like, I really value that. And then, I'm sitting here, like this situation occurred. I let this happen. I'm sitting here looking at this promise ring that's still on my finger. Like, do I still wear this? Like, it was just a lot of like back and forth and like emotional, like pain that I was feeling about the situation. I was completely in my head, like the whole time. That it caused me, and that's probably what caused the depression, because it caused me not to be able to function in other capacities. I was a college student. Like, I wasn't going to classes. And I know a lot of us don't go to class, but I was like, it was my freshman year. I was not worried about any classes. Like, that's crazy. Like, I needed to be going to class. Like, that was the reason I was there. Like, I was just in my dorm room. I'm not experiencing, what college has to offer. I'm in my dorm room, like, wasting away in a sense. So, yeah, it was just it was a painful period, but I was able to get through it with the help, me personally, of a therapist, and, obviously my faith and things of that nature. And the crazy thing, another thing that kind of got me through it was I had another friend who actually went through the same situation with the same person. So it kind of made me be like, okay, so it wasn't just something I did. Like that either this person does this, which is what I kind of came to the conclusion of. Mainly this person does this. So.
And you know what the crazy thing is that, when you told me that situation happened and with that person, I think I was more shocked that it happened again with another person. Simply because it's almost like, dude, are you really doing this and continuing to do this to people? And it's like, do you not know what you're doing is wrong? You just really start to think, back and be like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
You wasn't raised this way. You get what I'm saying? Like, especially when you know the person's family. You get what I'm saying? And in that case, me knowing that person, you like, this is not the people who raised you. You get what I'm saying? Like, I don't see this. But at the same time, like you say, you never know what happens in closed doors. Maybe that individual was sexually assaulted. And it's been proven that if they've been sexually assaulted, then 9 times out of 10, they're going to do that to a victim. You get what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. So, the crazy thing is, when I was little, I did find out the person that sexually assaulted me when I was little was also being sexual. Because I told you guys before, it was by a kid that was my age. Like, I was in kindergarten. It was by another 5-year-old. So I found out later in life that they were being sexually assaulted at home too.
Yep.
And that situation also happened to another classmate.
Wow.
So.
And again, I feel like it's just a subject that people are not really comfortable talking through. But at the same time, like, even going back to my situation, everyone was saying, we're going to report this to the police. Even my cousins, my cousin and my uncle is on the police force. So my cousin's sister was like, we're taking this to the police. And, I told her no. And the reason why I told her no was because I didn't want to relive it. And people be like, oh, you have to be brave and speak up. I spoke up to the people who knew, who's in that circle, who I was around. They knew, and they did hold that person accountable for their actions. But I think that's the main reason why I didn't go to the police, is because it was just very traumatic, and I did not want to go through that again. I spent days not even talking to the people I normally talk to. You get what I'm saying? So when people be like, oh, you should have did this, you should have did that, sometimes you just have to put yourself in that person's position and to know how they're thinking and feeling, to really analyze, like, yo, I can see why they did this, or I can see why they did that. Looking back at it, do I regret not telling the police, I feel like I would regret it if this person does it to somebody else. Definitely so. But again, in that moment, I was just thinking about myself.
Right.
And again, you have to put yourself first in that situation. Because at the time, like I said, I just didn't want to revisit, that
Right.
situation ever. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did want to mention, based off what you said, trauma is not something that goes away. You can feel less trauma on some days, more trauma on others. You can have certain events that happen that, bring back flashbacks and things of that nature. And, you're right back to square one. Like, there's not a perfect way to work through your trauma, but, pushing through to work through it, dealing with it, are all steps that we all can take. And we talked a lot about like signs or things you might experience when you go through trauma just based off of our own experiences. I definitely want to have a future episode where we talk about where we are currently in our progress and what we're working toward when we're dealing with our trauma. Because like I said, trauma doesn't go away. It's like, how are we currently dealing with it? So I definitely want to continue the discussion because like I said, trauma is such a big topic. We only talked about relationship trauma. We didn't even get into other things. So yeah, is there anything else you want to mention when it comes to, signs or things personally you dealt with, or just any encouraging words for the audience?
Again, like Makaya said, trauma can come from different events, as well. Like I know when Katrina happened, that was very traumatic for a lot of people simply because a lot of people died. A lot of people had to relocate. A lot of people didn't and still aren't back to their full capacity, that they were at when they was in New Orleans at that time.
Right.
Lost homes and like everything. They basically had to restart over fresh. But again, when you lose so much, your school, your house, your friends, your family, and relocate to somewhere unknown, that's traumatic. Even when people survive tornadoes and things of that nature, that's traumatic. You get what I'm saying? Because it's like, oh my God, I damn near died. You know what I'm saying? That's really how it was. I will never forget one of my coworkers and I, we went to the lake. It's like a park. The lake is in the middle, but it's a huge trail. It's a good maybe 2.5 miles around the lake. And we did not know that it was supposed to rain and do all this storming, y'all. We didn't even look at the forecast. Like I say, it was a beautiful day. The next thing you know, it's almost like hell came out of nowhere. And I mean, the wind literally lifted us up, you guys. Literally lifted us up. And it's almost like I saw my life flashing. You know what I'm saying? And me and her, we was holding on tight because when I say the wind literally picked us up and we all, each other had at this time. And by the grace of God, this lady in a car with some kids, she said, get in the car. And we ran. I don't know how we got to that car with the gust of wind and like the rain, girl. I don't know how we got to that car, but thank God we did.
Right.
Because literally, as soon as we started running, a tree snapped right in front of us, like a big tree. Like,
oh my gosh.
I'm sure we would have got stuck up under that tree.
Right.
Girl, it was just crazy. And we were thinking, we was like, do you see how big this lake is? The lake goes at least 20 feet deep. You get what I'm saying? Just to think, oh, we would have got, wrapped in that tornado and hell, we could have drowned. Anything could have happened. So, girl, it was very traumatic because I was just like, oh, thank you, God. We made it, and like God was really watching out. But that was a traumatic experience in itself. So when I say it's a storm or if I see the clouds coming, I'm getting inside somewhere. I'm not even finna risk it.
Right. You made me think. Two things I want to say. Remind me. I'm gonna say the first thing, but remind me if I what did I want to say second? Just say friendships.
Okay.
So the first thing I want to say is I don't want to say trauma can be as big or small, but some people see certain traumas as smaller. Some people say certain traumas as bigger. But I don't categorize that at all as either one. Right. Trauma is trauma. But you can experience trauma with things. Some people don't like birds, and it's because they had a traumatic experience with a bird, whether it be a chicken or usually anything of that nature when they were little or things like that. Some people don't like bees, maybe because they had a traumatic experience when they were little with a bee, and maybe they got stung and swole up, and now they don't even go anywhere near bees, don't want to be by bees. So I want to make sure people know that when we're talking about trauma, we're talking about a wide range of things. And then friendships is the second thing. I remember, you didn't have to remind me. We talked a lot about our personal stories were sexual in nature when it came to relationships. But I'll tell you guys, I've had a few friendship situations that have caused me trauma. And I want to tell this story very quickly, only because I want people to be able to relate. And if you can relate to this, just let me know. Because I know a lot of people have been through situations like this where you feel like friends, I'm not going to go into detail, but situations where you feel like friends, I want to say distrust, but what is the word before distrust?
Betray.
Thank you. Betray your distrust or betray your trust in certain situations. It could be anywhere from, telling someone something that you entrusted your friend to keep a secret. It could be where, a friend pursues someone specifically that you're in a relationship with. I'm trying to think of something else, like a specific example.
Stole from you.
Yeah, stole from you. Just anything of that nature that can cause you trauma. I've had a few friendships. I'll talk about the one that actually relates to the sexual story I talked about, because I was going to say it earlier, but I was like, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. The friend who was actually on the top bunk, later, maybe 6 months or so later, we fall out. Just don't be, roommates with your friends if you're going to college, you guys. It's never a good situation. But later we fall out, and she writes this letter to me. Because we're not talking at the moment. So we're roommates. I'm leaving. It's my last day. I look on my bags and there's a letter. Tell me why this girl has written in the letter, mainly calling me like, a hoe, something of that nature, saying, I'm going to tell your mom that this situation happened, like literally threatening me, and saying this and that. And this is the same friend. Remember, if you remember the story from earlier on, who was like, Micaiah, this was not okay. She was the one that got me out of the room, was like, we need to go tell someone. So just be very careful. I don't want to say be careful with your relationships. Like, who you're friends with. If you're not supposed to be friends with that, we talked about toxic friendships in another episode. But yeah, things like that can cause you trauma when it comes to like trusting new people. Like after that situation, I was not really open to meeting a lot of new people. It had to come very genuinely. Like actually, me and Janelle did become friends after that, but our friendship was very genuine. Mm-hmm. Like me and Janelle have not had any real issues. Like we are good. For the most part, I think we both trust each other. Like we know what we are here to do in this friendship. But yeah, just, certain things like that can, it's distrust. Like for you to be in that situation and then for you to go tell me that you're going to start telling people about it or to, start calling me names and what I went through, you were there when it happened. Like, it's just crazy.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So, and I agree with that. This is my thing. Your friends are going to protect you as well. Mm. So no matter what your trauma story is, your friends are going to stick with you through that whole entire process. They're going to talk to you, mentor you, check on you.
Right.
And if, like I said, my frat brother, he checked on me quite a few times. He called me, hey, how you doing? You was on my mind. Just want to check up on you. Mm-hmm. Or even you, MB, you reached out. Hey girl, I ain't heard from you. You okay? How you doing? Because again, I did kind of go a little bit MIA, mm-hmm. dealing with everything. But if you or friends with that person and they told you a story about the trauma that they're, currently going through, you're supposed to stick through that. And I expect my friends to, well, if I'm close to you, then and you have like a relationship partner like you and Micah, if you was to tell Micah, I'd be okay with it because, we got that relationship, and rapport. But if you just go and tell Susie Sue my business, yeah, I'm gonna be like, oh,
Right.
word. I'll be like, distance myself from you. So I totally agree with it. I totally agree.
Well, you guys, we shared a lot. You guys got a little sneak peek of our lives. So that brings us to the end of our episode. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. Like I said before, we did really share a lot. We just wanted to connect with you guys and kind of tell this topic of trauma from our own personal experiences. So again, thank you so much, Janelle, for sharing, your personal stories.
Thank you. You as well, MB. And this is my thing. I feel like the people should just know we're just coming from a place of honesty, open, and transparency. We want you to see the real. We don't want to sugarcoat and put icing and sprinkles on top of something. And it's not always cute and dandy. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Sometimes you have to see the bruises and the Band-Aids to really get the full picture of somebody.
So. Okay. I like how you said that. I like that. I'm gonna have to steal that. The Band-Aids and bruises to get the full picture of somebody. I like it. But like I said, I do want to mention that, this topic doesn't stop here. We are going to talk a little bit more about trauma. There's so many parts. And I definitely want to talk about like the work that we're currently doing. Cause like I said, we talked about the signs, our own personal stories, but we didn't really go into like what we're currently doing to deal with it. But again, this is the end of our episode. Thank you, you guys. If you've made it this far, we family. You've done sit here and listen to us for about 40 or so minutes. Like we are family. So support your family. And to support us, you just, like the audio clip or the video, subscribe to our podcast. Maybe you want to download an episode. Maybe you want to share this with someone later, or you want to, reference back to some points. So feel free to do that. That's the way you can support us. But if you want to, reach out to us or continue this conversation, we do have an IG page. It is @BeingBecomingPodcast. So like I said, @BeingBecomingPodcast on Instagram. You can go on over there. We try to post our show topics each week. I will say I didn't get to it this week. I apologize. We do usually try to post it, before we actually shoot. And, we sit there and we ask you guys questions on our stories. You can ask us questions. You can send us a DM. If there's anything we previously talked about in any of the previous episodes that you're like, hey, I want to know a little bit more about this, or like if you guys kind of, re-reviewed this or talked a little bit more about that, shoot us a DM. We'll be happy to talk about a previous episode or a topic or go a little bit more in detail. So again, thanks to you guys so much for listening or watching, as we're on YouTube as well. And if you want to follow me personally, you can follow me at @I'mJustMB on Instagram.
And you can follow me at 𝒶𝓃𝓃𝑒𝓁.
Hey, and we will see you guys next week.